What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons every single day. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So come on over, say hello, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. The support on the channel has been unbelievable so far, and it's all thanks to you guys. So again, thank you. And with that being said, let's jump right into today's video. The first thing I wanted to address is yesterday I said that TJ Bickerstaff was JB Bickerstaff's son, and that was a mistake on my end, so I apologize for that. TJ is actually JB's nephew, so I just wanted to clear that up, and if I do make mistakes on here, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd like to go back and fix those, so I appreciate whoever it was that mentioned that in the comments section. TJ Bickerstaff is JB Bickerstaff's nephew, not son. But now that I've cleared that up, let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Dennis Shruder sign and trade. It was officially announced that that sign and trade is done, so I'll just talk about that. And then I just want to talk about the development of Jaden Ivy. Trejan Langan had some things to say about him today. I'll go over. And then I just want to touch on Trejan Langan as a whole. His comments to the media today. Amari Sankofi II interviewed him today and got some quotes from him, so I'll go over that. And then finally, I just want to talk about Caris Levert and Duncan Robinson, the two new additions. Trejan Langan touched on those. I'll give my thoughts on his comments and just where I see those two fitting in this rotation. But first things first, let's just talk about the Dennis Shruder trade real quick. So obviously, as you guys know, the Dennis Shruder sign and trade saga was a week of uncertainty. There was people that were saying that it was going to happen, saying that it wasn't, and then a day later, totally reverting on what they said the day before. So it was all over the place. There was a lot of people in the media who were mistaken, and I mean, it happens. It happens. I've done it before. I've made mistakes as well. So it's all speculation, and as you know, media members, there's not really a ton we can do if you don't have direct quotes from the front office. So there was just a ton of speculation, and it ended up just being all smoke and mirrors and nothing really that held any truth. The sign and trade ended up just being a heavily protected second round pick, 1 through 55, so very unlikely that the Pistons actually get that draft pick. The main purpose and the main reasoning behind the sign and trade was to give the Pistons a $14.3 million trade exception, like we talked about in previous videos. That trade exception is not always utilized, but it gives the Pistons flexibility to evaluate what is missing on the team early on in the season. Then you can make a move at the deadline. If you're contending, you're sitting around the 3, 4, 5 seed, or even higher than that, and you think that you have a good chance of making the playoffs and making a push, then you can use that $14.3 million to go get somebody like a PJ Washington, which is just a name that I mentioned yesterday. So it was a roller coaster of a situation. At first, maybe we thought we were getting Malik Monk, and then it was downgraded to maybe a Trey Lyles, and then people thought, oh, maybe it could be John Collins, but clearly nothing. It was all just smoke and mirrors. It was all just kind of fluff from the fan base trying to get excited about something with, kind of an underwhelming free agency period so far. But again, Trejan Langan, he's very adamant about wanting to build through his young core, so he didn't really want to go out and give $22.6 million to somebody, or it would have been less than that, not exactly 22.6, but he didn't want to go give $18 million to Malik Monk or $22 million to John Collins or something like that, where he would have had to take on a big contract, probably would have gotten tied down for a couple of years, especially if it was Malik Monk, because he has a few years left on his contract. So Trejan didn't want to do that. He wanted to get that trade exception. That was kind of the whole reasoning behind letting Dennis Shruder go and allowing that to turn into a sign and trade. I think that they were plenty happy getting that trade exception, and you have some flexibility. You have some money to work with at the trade deadline if that's something that you're interested in. And again, Trejan Langan, we trust in what he is doing. We trust in his ability. Last year, he gave us no reason to not believe in him. He did what we needed in the offseason. He got veteran pieces around Cade. He got floor spacing. This offseason, there hasn't been a ton of huge splashes, but there wasn't really last offseason. So I think that he's got a plan in place. He's developing his young core, and everything is kind of going to plan for them. And I think that the next big piece for them is seeing if Jaden Ivy can take that next step. And so let's just dive into that. The Jaden Ivy development is crucial for this team's success in the future, obviously. He was a number 5 overall pick. He's shown some flashes. Last year before he got hurt, he was shooting 40% from 3, showing the ability to be that second option next to Cade Cunningham in the backcourt. And clearly, Trejan Langan and the front office are expecting him to continue to take those leaps and potentially be a second option on a championship team in the future. So there's a lot of discourse on Twitter and the Pistons community whether or not they think Jaden Ivy can be that. And again, only time will tell. We'll get a good sample size this year. Clearly, they want to feature him as much as they can in the offense. And I think he's going to kind of show people that he's making the right strides. He's still very young, only I think 22 years old, 23. And there's still a ton of room for growth, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But there is definitely some things he has to work on. I'm not just saying he's going to waltz right in this year, be a 22 point per game scorer on 50, 40, 90 splits. No, there's a ton that he has to do better. And I'll just go over that real quick. One of the biggest things that I think that Jaden Ivy needs to improve on just to kind of get to that next level is just overall finishing at the rim. Last year, he shot 47% at the rim, which is not good. That was in the 13th percentile in the league. As a 6'4 guard, yeah, it's a little bit harder to finish over taller defenders, but you look at somebody like Caris Levert, he shot 58% from the rim last year. So Jaden Ivy has definitely some room for improvement on that. And if he can start to finish at the rim and that three-pointer starts to come back to where it was last year, where he's shooting between 37, 40%, then he can be a very, very valuable offensive threat for this team, especially with that ability to drive downhill. He's so explosive and quick. He can take any defender off the dribble, really, and it's only a matter of time before those drives start turning into finishes, and we start to see him take that next level as just an overall 3-level scorer. But I think coming out of college, his downhill driving ability was one of the biggest, one of the most intriguing parts of his game. And that really we've seen flashes of it, but the efficiency's not there. It's not as guaranteed as we might have thought. When he's driving downhill, you're still apprehensive about whether or not he's going to be able to find an angle or finish. And that's definitely something that he has to be better at. And if he is this year, though, you could see him taking a very big jump. I don't necessarily think he's going to be an all-star or really be a somebody that you look at as a top 25, top 30 player yet, but he's still very young. And if those parts of his game start to come together, it's only a matter of time before the defense follows and the rim efficiency follows, and he starts to become a good pull-up jump shooter from mid-range. His floater gets better. That's another thing, a part of his game that we need to see improve is just his touch at the rim and his a good floater or a push shot from the middle of the paint when you're not able to get all the way to the rim could be very valuable in his game as well. So there's just a lot of parts that we still have yet to see. He was injured last year, but before he was injured, especially those last 2 weeks before he got injured, man, you could see that he showed a ton of promise. So there's just a lot to like about his game overall. And I know it's a little bit disappointing to look at this team on paper and see, man, we didn't really make any additions. But at the end of the day, you don't really need to, you need to amass talent. You don't need to go out and acquire it right away. There's got to be some learning curve, and there's got to be some sort of process that goes into it. And I think Jaden Ivey's still in that process. Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, even Cade are all still in that growth process where they're finding out where their niche is in the NBA. And once they kind of come into their own, it's going to be a really scary sight. So stay patient with Trejan. I know we want to see big splashes and see big blockbuster moves, but Trejan 2 weeks ago alluded to the fact that he wasn't going to do that. He followed his promise. He didn't. Made a couple different additions here and there, and it's not the most exciting or intriguing offseason of all time. But at the end of the day, when we get out there in October and we're watching this team and we're watching them mesh together and seeing the improvement, I think we're going to forget about mid-July when we were mad that the Pistons didn't go out and get somebody with that Dennis Shruder sign and trade. But moving on, I'm going to continue to talk about Trejan Langan just because, he had media availability today. And this is one of the last episodes we'll kind of talk about free agency and talk about additions and subtractions and stuff during the offseason because we'll get into Summer League here in the next couple of days. But The first thing I wanted to just talk about with Trejan Langan is Amari Sankofi. Like I mentioned, go check him out at the Detroit Free Press. Unbelievable beat writer. Covers everything Pistons. Is always on time. I use all of his stuff. Just unbelievable beat writer. So shout out to Amari Sankofi. Go check out his stuff at the Freep. But he had a video today that he posted of Trejan Langan where he just was asking him some questions about Duncan Robinson, Caris Levert, the young core. And he said 2 weeks ago that he wasn't going to make a big additions, and then he said it again today. They're focused on honing in on the young core, adding talent around the young core that's going to complement their games, and allowing them to just work their butts off. He said they're working their butts off right now in the training facility. He's seeing the growth. He's seeing the improvement. And as spectators and as outside people, we're not seeing what's going on behind the scenes. So they have a much better idea of who's improving, who's getting better, what different skills and what different parts of the game that certain players are adding. So there's just a lot, obviously, that Trejan Langan is seeing, and I just think he wants to kind of reassure the fan base and everybody around the Pistons community that they're making strides, whether or not it's a big part of the news or big headlines. They're making strides behind the scenes, and I don't see a world where going out and adding like a John Collins or a Miles Turner or a Jaren Jackson Jr. this offseason where you're shelling out a bunch of money for a guy that you are still unsure about how they would fit with your team. I don't necessarily think that was ever going to push this team to a championship level. So I like them building through the core. I like them. I like Trejan Langan coming out and saying specifically, we're not in the spot right now where we're going to go make a big splash. We're just going to let these guys do their thing, improve, develop, and 2 months down the line, if things aren't going the way we thought, then we have now flexibility with that trade exception to make a move at the deadline, do something that's going to add depth to this team, whether it be at the power forward position, point guard, who knows. They did it last season with Dennis Shruder. They kind of were forced to with the Jaden Ivy injury, but it ended up working out really well. Dennis Shruder was pretty solid for them down the stretch and into the postseason. So there's still moves to be made. The trade deadline isn't until February, or January, late January, early February, whenever it is. But you still have time to evaluate your team, see what they're doing well, see what's not really working out, and go make moves from there. And then moving on to our last topic before we wrap things up, I just wanted to talk about Caris Levert and Duncan Robinson, another topic that Trejan Langan touched on today. And something that I just liked about what Trejan was talking about with Caris Levert is that, one, he can handle the ball. He can play off ball. He was a decent shooter last year at 37%. He finishes at the rim really well at 58%, like I mentioned earlier. And he's just an overall very solid three-level scorer. He's not going to be dominant in one area. He's not going to be a Cade Cunningham in the mid-range or Anthony Edwards three-point shooter. But he is going to be a very solid player in all three aspects of the game, especially on offense. And then he can also guard 1 through 3. Trejan Langan mentioned that. And I like that because when you really only have Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland as your defensive wings, it's hard because they're younger, they're inexperienced. But when you add a 30-year-old like Caris Levert, who still plays pretty well defensively and moves pretty well laterally, it's nice to have that option where you can have him guard a 1, 2, or a 3. And with Cade and Jaden Ivy being pretty limited on the defensive end, having some versatility, especially off the bench, with that defensive guard depth is going to help a lot. And then Trejan Langan also just talked about how both Caris Levert and Duncan Robinson are going to come in and they're going to add value to the current depth, the current young core. And I agree. I think, like I said, Caris Levert is going to help out the backcourt defensively. He's going to help out the second unit offensively. Duncan Robinson is going to space the floor. He's an unbelievable spot-up shooter, especially from the corner. And he's going to give you great minutes as a spot-up shooter. He's going to allow Cade Cunningham more floor spacing. So there's just a lot of areas where both those players, they might not be the most insane players of all time. They're not all-stars. They're not even really close to all-stars, but they are pieces that are versatile on offense and can complement Jaden Ivy, Cade Cunningham, Ausar Thompson, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, all of these guys that they are your future. They are the core pieces that you have to develop and are still very young and raw and are very impressionable right now. So surrounding them with smart veterans, savvy guys is very helpful. And then you bring back another guy like Tobias Harris, another veteran player that's going to help the young core grow, that his skill set is complementary to Jalen Duren because he's a better defender. He guarded Karl Anthony Towns last year, allowing Jalen Duren to stay on the floor because he wasn't getting burnt by Karl Anthony Towns every other play. So there's just things where, yeah, these players aren't going to blow you away with their box scores or anything, but the things that they do on the court, they affect winning, and they're going to make your young core better. But just let me know in the comments or on Twitter if the additions or lack thereof is starting to make sense when looking at the future of the team and what Trejan Langan has continued to allude to. And also, if you're someone who didn't like the signings of Caris Levert and Duncan Robinson, explain why and what direction you would have rather have seen the front office go in. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments or over on Twitter your thoughts on the final Dennis Shruder sign-and trade and who you'd like to see the Pistons target with their $14.3 million trade exception. Also, if you saw Trejan Langan quotes or any videos today, just let me know your thoughts on what he said. I wasn't able to get into everything he touched on, but just give me your big takeaways and things you'd like to see me cover in more depth later this week. I know he talked about Ausar Thompson getting in the gym and getting more physically built, so it's something I could talk about. Let me know if you guys would like to hear me touch on that. And then also the first Summer League game for the Pistons is on Friday against the Knicks at 6 o'clock. So I will preview that for Friday's episode. And then on Saturday, an episode will come out where I will just break down the Summer League game as a whole, who stood out, and kind of what to expect going forward. But as always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter over at Kyle Garrison too. Once again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in every single day. The channel is growing at an insane rate, and it's all thanks to you guys. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 17 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.